Welcome. You're listening to the Malcontent News Russia-Ukraine War podcast, the show that cuts through the fog of war and updates you about the ongoing conflict in Ukraine. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Google Podcasts.
Hello, I'm Marina Yevshan, your host of the Russia-Ukraine War Report podcast, and today is July the 1st, 2024. It has been 3,808 days since Russia started covert military operations in Crimea, 10 years and 132 days since the start of the Russia-Ukraine war, and 2 years, 128 days since Russia expanded its war of aggression. Today's podcast looks at events that happened over the weekend and Monday morning. During the podcast, you will find the Russia-Ukraine war map helpful to visualize the areas discussed. A link is in the podcast description, and there are map updates. The Russia-Ukraine war report is compiled by our team from around the world. Today's report includes information from our direct contacts and journalists in Ukraine, the Russian Ministry of Defense, the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine morning reports, operational commands north, south and east of Ukraine, open source intelligence, our in-house team of analysts and geospatial experts, and pro-Ukrainian and pro-Russian mail bloggers and social media channels with a track record of trying to be accurate. We have one mission, the truth, because the truth matters. Here is my daily assessment. There aren't many changes from last week, so if you want to skip ahead, I don't mind. I won't even know. 1. We maintain that Russian forces are experiencing an equipment shortage, particularly armored vehicles, which is impacting mobility and logistics. 2. Russia will continue to make tactical gains during its current offensive, but the lack of mobility, low morale, poor battlefield medicine and logistics issues make it unlikely that there will be significant breaches of existing Ukrainian defensive lines. 3. We maintain the world is caught in the mutually assured destruction instability paradox. 4. Russia is setting conditions to commit further acts of aggression in Europe. 5. Russia's sustained attacks on Ukraine's energy infrastructure, which has destroyed over 80% of its combined thermal and power plant capacity, is a continuation of Russian crimes against humanity that started in October 2022, as outlined in 2 arrest warrants issued by the International Criminal Court on March the 5th. 6. Russia's trampling of international humanitarian law has been accelerating since March the 22nd. We maintain that the willful ignoring of blatant Russian war crimes by international watchdogs is encouraging escalation. 7. Autocrat Putin is continuing the largest purge of the Russian Ministry of Defense led by the FSB since Joseph Stalin's 1936 to 1938 purge. 8. The attacks on Ukraine's energy infrastructure have incrementally increased the chance of an intentional nuclear accident at multiple nuclear facilities in Ukraine. Over the weekend, Russian attacks on civilians and civilian infrastructure wounded at least 143 and killed 30. On June the 28th and the 29th, Ukrainian air defenses intercepted all 10 Shahed-136 one-way drones launched by Russia. There were no reports of significant damage or casualties from falling debris. On Sunday, a Fab-500 UMPK glide bomb struck the Nova Poshta shipping terminal in the Slobitsky district in Kharkiv. 10 people were wounded, including an 8-month-old baby, and 1 driver was killed. President of Ukraine Volodymyr Zelensky said, quote, "These bombs of theirs are one of the key foundations of Putin's ability to fight. The sooner the world helps us deal with the Russian warplanes that launch these bombs, the sooner we can strike on Russian military infrastructure, on military airfields, the closer peace will be. Real peace." Elsewhere in the Kharkiv Oblast, the VKS bombed Tsirkuni on Saturday, wounding 8. Additional Russian attacks across the oblast wounded 8 and killed 1 in Varvarivka. On Friday in the Donetsk Oblast, the VKS, that's the Russian Aerospace Forces, dropped a Fab-3000 UMPK glide bomb on New York, killing 4 civilians and wounding 5. Over the weekend, the VKS repeatedly bombed Zarychne, killing 3 and wounding 1. Then on Sunday, the VKS bombed Drushkivka, killing 2 and wounding 6. On Sunday evening, the VKS bombed Tsukurine with a Fab-500 bomb, wounding 6, including a 14-year-old girl. Additional attacks across the Donetsk Oblast wounded another 14 and killed 5. On Saturday in the Zaporizhzhia Oblast, at least one Iskander-M short-range ballistic missile struck the center of Luhansk, destroying 2 high-rise apartment buildings and 12 businesses. The attack wounded 38, including 9 children and a pregnant woman, with 12 still in hospital. 7 people were killed, including 3 children aged 10 to 17. United States Ambassador to Ukraine, Bridget Brink, condemned the attack, writing on Twitter, also known as X, quote, "We join the people of Luhansk, Zaporizhzhia Oblast in mourning after Russia's heinous, illegal missile attack yesterday. The US continues to support Ukraine in holding Russia accountable for these war crimes." In the Kherson Oblast, Russian forces have significantly increased the number of one-way drone attacks targeting civilians. The spokesperson for the Kherson Oblast Military Administration, Alexander Tolokonnikov, warned area residents to be very careful when traveling and outdoors. Over the weekend, Russian artillery attacks, drone strikes and airstrikes wounded 16 and killed 6, including a 42-year-old man at the humanitarian aid headquarters in the settlement of Daryivka. On Friday, a Russian missile struck an apartment building in Dnipro, destroying the top 4 floors. Despite the damage, only 1 person was killed, with 12 wounded. Another missile attack on Sunday night damaged a supermarket, apartment buildings and other civilian infrastructure. 7 people were wounded, including a 15-year-old boy, with 2 in hospital. Weekend shelling and drone attacks on the Nikopol rayon of Dnipropetrovsk Oblast wounded 3 more civilians. On Sunday, Russia launched 2 missiles at Kyiv, with both intercepted. Debris struck a 14-story apartment building, causing significant damage on the 8th and 9th floors. 6 people were injured, with 1 in hospital. And finally, on Friday, Russia shelled the settlement of Znobnovhorodske in the Sumy Oblast, wounding 1. President Zelensky reported that over the last week, the VKS has used more than 800 guided aerial bombs. Speaking with the United States newspaper The Philadelphia Inquirer, the Ukrainian leader appealed for the United States to allow strikes on Russian military airfields. Quote, "There are airfields where they use UAVs, and as long as their UAVs don't fly at a long distance, we can hit these airfields. But there are already airfields at a longer distance. Today we need to be allowed to use ATACMS deep into the Russian Federation." Unquote. Here is today's action report summary. Over the weekend, Russia carried out at least 417 assaults, including a record-tying 170 on Friday. Through Sunday evening, 109 attacks had been recorded by the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine. This exceeds the 398 assaults recorded last weekend. As of June the 29th, the 7-day moving average for daily attacks was 148. The table for Russian versus Ukrainian equipment losses was updated using information from the Oryx database through June the 30th, 2024, and includes the losses suffered during the Prigozhin insurrection of June the 23rd and the 24th, 2023. There are too many details to cover in the podcast, but you can subscribe to our Patreon to access our almost daily situation report. There is more information in the podcast description, including a link to a 7-day free trial. Through June the 29th, the Officers Killed in Ukraine project reported that since February the 24th, 2022, 4,327 officers have been killed in action in Ukraine. The average remains just above 5 a day. Losses include 2,894 junior officers and 816 senior officers, including 94 colonels and 7 generals. Another 617 officers have been confirmed killed in action, but their exact rank could not be determined. Each name is confirmed by a Russian source using funeral notices, obituaries, graves, news platforms, monuments, and memorial plaques, and the actual number is higher. Now, let's talk about what happened on the battlefield. Ready? Here we go. Starting in the Kharkiv Oblast, we begin in the Lipty-Vovchansk area of operation, or AO. Fighting continued in Vovchansk, with no notable changes in territorial control. Russian forces operating in the northern part of the settlement near the cemetery suffered heavy losses and retreated north to Orlova Street. Members of the Russian 1009th Regiment reported that all members of their company were wounded or dead, with at least one missing, and they had been ordered to attack again. Two brothers appealed to the military prosecutor's office and autocrat Vladimir Putin to investigate the treatment of the unit. The 1009th Regiment has suffered heavy losses through June, with the 5th Company reporting that of 100 members, only 12 were still alive. Russian sources also reported that members of the 153rd Tank Regiment and Chechen Akhmat refused orders to advance into Vovchansk. To the west, Ukrainian and Russian sources reported mutual fighting continued in the village of Hluboke. In the area of Lipty, the 4th Rapid Reaction Brigade Rubish of the National Guard of Ukraine took several dozen Russian troops prisoner. In a statement on Facebook, the Ministry of Internal Affairs said, quote, "Atrocities, killing civilians, torture and abuse of unarmed people are the way of Russia. Ukrainian soldiers are warriors who have honor and dignity. So they treat enemy prisoners humanely." Unquote. Russian state media agency Baza reported that 5 more bombs had fallen off of Russian aircraft into the Belgorod region of Russia, including a FAB-3000 UMPK, which landed near the village of Maslova Pristan. The report indicates that Russia has successfully modified the center pylon of the Su-34 to carry the 3,067-kilogram bomb. 2 more bombs, including a FAB-1500, were found near Krutoy Log. Russia claims it bombed the base of the 13th Separate Special Purpose Brigade of the National Guard in Slobozhansk with a FAB-3000 UMPK bomb. The geolocated video recorded by a drone zooms in on the barn that was hit after the strike, which shows no equipment, no vehicles, and no troops. The adjacent building has 2 walls blown out and also appears to be empty. Moving south to the Kupiansk AO, Russian forces continued their attacks in the direction of Sinkivka and Stepova-Novoselivka, with no change in the situation. In the Svatovo AO of the Luhansk Oblast, Russian forces broke through Ukrainian defenses and came within 200 meters of the eastern edge of Stelmachivka before being repulsed. Based on the new intelligence, we adjusted the line of conflict on the war map. In the Crimea AO, Russian attacks in the direction of Grekivka, Makiyivka, Nevske and Torske were successfully repulsed. The Ukrainian 12th Special Purpose Azov Brigade made additional gains north of the Siversky Donets River in the Serebryanka forest, in the direction of Shipilivka and Bilogorivka. The map was adjusted. Let's talk about the Donbass and the northeastern part of the Donetsk Oblast. Russian forces continued to pressure Ukrainian defensive lines in the Siversky AO. Another attack in the direction of Verkhnyokamyansk from Zolotarivka ended in failure, and fighting continued near Spirne and southeast of Vyimka. In the Kostantinivka AO, there was fighting on the western edge of Bogdanivka, the eastern part of the Canal district of Chasiv Yar, and the northwestern part of Ivanivska. Fighting also continued in the area of Klishchiivka, where Ukrainian forces made tactical gains. Heavy fighting continued in the Toretsk-New York AO, where the situation remained difficult. NASA Fire Information for Resource Management Systems showed the impact of Russian artillery, drone and airstrikes across the AO, with thermal anomalies east of Pivnichne and Zalizne and in the southern part of New York. We'll link to the image in our situation report. Over the weekend, the Russian Ministry of Defense reported that Shumy had been captured, which most Western analysts had placed under Russian control last week. Heavy fighting continued near Druzhba, Pivnichne, Zalizne and Pivdenne. Here's what we know about the situation in the southwestern part of the Donetsk Oblast. The heaviest fighting in Ukraine continued in the Avdiivka AO, with over 114 Russian attacks carried out over the weekend. Russian sources released a video showing Ukrainian positions being shelled near Novoselivka. The area was previously coded as under Russian control, so the map was adjusted. Fighting continued in Novo-Alexandrivka, where a Ukrainian T-64BM medium-duty tank entered the eastern part of the settlement from the T-511 highway and fired at homes occupied by Russian troops. We link to the video showing 125mm shells being fired at point-blank range into the Russian positions. Fighting also continued in the direction of Vozdvizhenka, Progress, Yevgenivka and Novoselivka Persha. Based on two geolocated videos, Russian forces have re-entered the eastern part of Sokil. One of the videos shows a Russian soldier surviving a near hit by a one-way drone and continuing to walk in the eastern part of the village, which has been obliterated. He walks past the bodies of 15 Russian soldiers, with the drone following him for several minutes before he too is killed. Further south, fighting continued west of Umanska. Russian sources reported fighting continued in the area of Karlivka, with mercenary Melblogovo Gonza reporting, quote, fighting in the area of the reservoir and outskirts. War-Gonza also reported fighting continued near Nevelske. Over the weekend in the Vuhledar AO, Russian forces made tactical gains. Fighting continued in Krasnogorivka, where there weren't any significant changes to the situation. Heavy fighting was ongoing in the western part of Paraskoviivka, and the Ukrainian Air Force bombed Russian positions on the eastern tip of the fishing pond. Russian forces were able to advance on the south bank of the pond and reached the eastern edge of Kostantinivka. The 79th Brigade was able to repulse the attack, but based on the new intelligence, we moved the line of conflict west. On the southern edges of occupied Novomikhailivka, a column of Russian infantry fighting vehicles attempted to move in the direction of occupied Solodka and came under fire by Ukrainian artillery. 7 vehicles were destroyed, forcing a retreat. We link to all of the videos I just mentioned. Finally, Russian attempts to advance toward Vodyane were unsuccessful. 4 members of the Russian 506th Regiment 2nd Battalion posted a video claiming that out of 350 members of their unit, they are the remaining survivors. Quote, we are under heavy artillery fire. We came under 155mm caliber fire under cluster munitions. All our guys were left lying in the forest plantations. We were deceived. We were sent for meat. We were surrounded and they defeated us. Members of the 57th Brigade 2nd Battalion fighting near Solodka made similar claims. Quote, our commanders told us that we cannot retreat. Even the wounded, those who go back, will be shot. Our wounded and dead cannot be taken out. Everyone is there. They just lie there. Over the weekend, fighting re-intensified in the Vremivka AO, with Russian assaults reported in the area of Staromayorske and near Urozhaine. There were no changes in territorial control.
You're listening to the Malcontent News Russia-Ukraine War Podcast. Our team of journalists, researchers and analysts is funded by readers, listeners and viewers just like you. To support independent journalism, please consider becoming a patron. You can find us on patreon.com/malcontentnews.
Here is the situation in Zaporizhzhia and Kherson Oblast. In the Gulyai-Pole AO, the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine reported a Russian assault near Chervone was repulsed. In the Orikhovo, positional fighting continued near Mala Tokmachka, northwest of Verbove, in Robotine, near Kopani, and in the direction of Novodanilivka. At the train station in Ukrainka in the Zaporizhzhia Oblast, Russia released a video showing a missile striking a train carrying what appeared to be military equipment. A missile with cluster munitions attacked another train at the same location on September 30, 2023. The General Staff did not report the attack, and there was no information on casualties. Over the weekend in the Kherson area, Russia carried out 4 assaults in the area of Krynke, suffered losses and retreated to their defensive positions. Ukrainian missiles reportedly struck near occupied Sholkine in Crimea. A sports complex in Mysove, where a Russian radar is located, was the potential target. At the time of recording, we could not provide a battle damage assessment. Over Odesa, the Ukrainian Air Force Yak-52 was photographed by a Russian Zala reconnaissance drone just before the UAV was shot down. The 1970s-era two-seat trainer has had 8 confirmed air-to-air interceptions and operates out of the range of Russian air defense. Here's what we know about events on the Russian front. Russian state media agency Baza reported that up to 7 Ukrainian drones struck the Novolipetsk steel factory in the Lipetsk Oblast, but only caused minor damage. Quote, according to preliminary data, one of the crashed drones damaged an oxygen separation unit. 4 more drones tried to attack the oxygen station building. One of the drones also damaged a garage. A representative of NLMK told Russian state media agency TASS that the attack was senseless, with the damage only causing an increase in welding work. Someone changed the sign, because it's been 0 days since a Belarusian official has threatened nuclear war. Wait, Belarus? On Sunday, the chief of the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Belarus, Pavel Muravyka, threatened to use nuclear weapons, quote, if the sovereignty or independence of Belarus was threatened. Quick assessment. Put the shovel away. You don't need to build a bunker because the Potato Kingdom won't use the nuclear weapons Russia stored in their country. Belarus can't do anything without the codes, and Moscow controls those. Muravyka also accused Ukraine and the NATO alliance of positioning 10 brigades with 20,000 troops on the Belarusian border, with plans to invade the Russian puppet state. Seeking to provoke everyone in every direction, Muravyka also blamed Poland for the immigrant crisis between their mutual borders. Quote, the Polish government found no better idea than to create barriers at the border. As a result, Europe started receiving less merchandise. In other words, France and Germany did. An information campaign was launched to portray Poland as the only outpost at the border between evil Belarus and entire Europe. Unquote. Poland is considering closing the last 2 open border crossings with Belarus due to a flood of Northern African and Middle Eastern immigrants. Moscow reportedly organizes the attempt to cross the border illegally. We are not world trade experts, but we are pretty sure that France and Germany will do just fine without Belarusian potatoes. Here is my Theaterwide update. President Zelensky announced that since June the 23rd, another 10 countries and multinational organizations have signed the Peace Summit communiqué, bringing their total to 88. Upon learning that Ukraine won't be invited to join NATO at the July summit in Washington, D.C., Zelensky said he feels that the present U.S. administration's and Republican leader Donald Trump's position on Ukraine's NATO accession does not reflect the, quote, policy of the world leaders, adding, if NATO is not ready to protect us and to take us into the alliance, then we ask NATO to give us everything so we can protect ourselves. The State Bureau of Investigation will investigate the actions of Lieutenant General Yuri Sodol during the defense of northern Kharkiv after complaints by Ukrainian field commanders. Russia's invasion on May 10th revealed incomplete static defenses and confusion among troops and commanders. Bogdan Krotevich, chief of staff of the Azov Brigade of the National Guard, wrote a letter to investigators accusing Sodol of incompetence that caused excessive casualties. On June 24th, President Zelensky relieved Sodol of his command of the Joint Forces of the Armed Forces of Ukraine. Over the weekend, a British citizen and founder of Project Constantine, Peter Fouché, was killed. Fouché has volunteered with the Ukrainian Armed Forces since March 2022 and is credited with saving countless lives as a medic and advocate for Ukraine. In February 2024, he made a video declaring he was ashamed that he was from the West and blasted Western governments for drip-feeding military aid to Ukraine.
I'm talking to planet Earth today. I'm talking to Western governments today. On behalf of my Commander-in-Chief, President Volodymyr Zelensky of the sovereign, peaceful nation of Ukraine, I'm absolutely ashamed to be a Westerner today. What in God's name do you think you people are doing, drip-feeding and delaying this desperately needed ammunition for Ukraine? What are you trying to achieve? Do you not know that God sees everything that you are doing? Do you think there are 77 virgins in paradise waiting for you? There ain't, mate. There ain't. There is no paradise like that. Tens and tens and tens of thousands of civilians have been butchered and are being butchered in this genocide, and yet you people just dilly and dally and pussyfoot around. I'm a medic in Ukraine, and we are shitting ourselves over here. Imagine these were your children being butchered out here. Put yourself in Ukrainian shoes for what?
Fouché was 49 and is survived by his 17-year-old daughter Nicola, who lives in South Africa. Ukrainian troops shot down a Russian Su-25 using man-pads. While we could verify the aircraft was hit, we could not geolocate the video. In our War Crimes and Human Rights section, I sometimes discuss and provide detailed information about human rights abuses, violence, torture, harm to children, and gender-based violence. Today's report is good news. On Friday evening, 10 Ukrainian civilians who have been held in captivity, some since 2017, were repatriated. Among them is Nariman Jalal, deputy chairman of the Majlis of the Crimean Tatar people, who has been held by Russia since 2021. Olena Pech, an art historian and researcher at the Gorlivka Art Museum, detained in 2018 when she attempted to visit her sick mother, and Valery Matyushenko, arrested in 2017 in occupied Donetsk. Bogdan Heleta and Ivan Levitsky, priests with the Ukrainian Greek Orthodox Church who were accused in November 2022 of aiding insurgents in the occupied city of Berdyansk, were also released. The remaining 5 civilians were arrested in Belarus and held at the behest of Moscow. Speaking to her daughter by phone, Pech said, quote, "Don't cry, don't cry. It's all over. I'm already in Ukraine." The Coordination Headquarters for the Treatment of Prisoners of War said that the Holy See, the governing body of the Catholic Church, negotiated the exchange. And that's what we know. Just a reminder that Thursday, July the 4th, is Independence Day in the United States, so there won't be a podcast. Your support of my home, Ukraine, helps us make history and protect the future for all.
You've been listening to the Malcontent News Russia-Ukraine War podcast. To help keep us independent, please consider providing financial support by becoming a patron. Want on-demand news in your hand? Download the Google News app and make Malcontent News one of your favorites to receive breaking news updates. Thank you for listening.